Hey, what's up, Street Talks? It's Eric from the Eric from Street Photography blog. So I wanted to share with you this idea on being relentless as a secret to success. So what does the word relentless mean? Relentless. Relent means, it generally means to quit, to slow, and to stop. Being relentless is to never stop. And this is one thing I've been thinking about a lot is perhaps the best way to define success is just to think about longevity. So don't think about, your influence, your impact now. Think if you could stay prolific 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And even when I look at the artists I admire the most, especially when it comes to like rappers, right? It's so funny. There's some rappers who come and go like that, remember like T-Pain and Sir Mix-a-Lot, all these other random people from the past. But who's been able to stay in the game a long time? Like Jay-Z, Nas, Kanye West, and it's Dr. Dre, and even my best friend Snoop Dogg. So it's very important for us to think about longevity because you don't want to be those people, like, for example, if you had the option of like blowing up quick and being famous for a short period of time, but then towards the end of your life, you're forgotten or you're not prolific or you're not known anymore, it's actually like insanely depressing. Perhaps it would be better to be unknown your whole life than to be super famous at a young age and then die unknown. So I think a practical tip is for us to never stop producing our artwork, however we decide to define that, whether it be our photos, our music, our writing, and so forth. And to be relentless is essential because whatever you want to improve on, of course, you need a lot of practice. So whether it be playing basketball or lifting weights, I think the best way to think of it is like, don't think of it like working out or working. Think of it just as practicing. So even whenever I make these videos, I treat it like practice. It's like practice of me to speak my ideas, practice of me to distill my thoughts. And believe it or not, unless you've ever tried it before, to speak in front of a webcam, or not a webcam, to speak in front of a camera on a tripod with a microphone just kind of pointing at you in a room by yourself is probably one of the most unnatural things a human could do. Generally speaking, when it comes to conversation, you're talking to somebody else and there's some sort of real-time feedback. But when you're talking by yourself, it's totally unnatural. And the only way to get better at it is just practice. Same thing like if you want to get stronger at the gym, treat your weightlifting as practice. And that's why whenever you go to the gym, this has actually been really helpful to me, is that you don't get discouraged when you, let's say you cannot successfully lift the weight you wanted to lift. And you just kind of brush it off your shoulder and you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter because it was just a practice. And generally when it comes to practices, a good or bad practice to me is defined by not whether you're successful or not, but whether you actually know that you put in your maximum effort and you kind of give it your all. And I think thinking about practice is a good way to think about life too, because even with photography, obviously you want to make good photos, but you never really know you're going to make a good photo while you're shooting it. So while you're shooting it, the best thing is to just treat it as practice. Like go out and you're practicing to taking pictures. And I think visual muscles and artistic muscles, it's like everything in life. We need constant stress, we need exposure, we need to challenge ourselves, and we need to keep practicing. And the idea of being relentless, I kind of like this idea. And maybe the practical question is, how do you stay relentless? Generally speaking, and I can't speak for you, I'll just speak for myself. I'm the type of person that I need pretty strong stimulants. Like I drink a lot of black coffee. Things also I like to do is I like to lift, do kind of like powerlifting, 1 rep max type lifts at the gym. So like heavy deadlifts, squats, dumbbell press. I like to listen to like pretty like kind of like gangster rap, or not really gangster rap, but then like even hip hop music that has a strong beat, like a strong bass line, something that kind of gets me in the zone, like so I could go hard. Also, other things is like even drinking cacao powder, actually I found to be helpful. It's almost like caffeine. It's like drinking a cup of coffee, except a little bit different. So drinking like 100% cacao powder, I think you can order some on Amazon, or even like those little cacao nibs, which have no sugar in it, which is generally good. Also, one thing that I've done in my life, which has helped me become way more productive, is I don't eat breakfast or lunch, and I fast until dinner time. And I've actually been playing, I've been playing around with this because generally speaking, after I have a big dinner, or generally after a meal, I kind of fall into like food coma, right? So I always thought to myself, what if I fasted all day and I just stayed productive all day and only had a big meal before I went to sleep? And it was actually interesting. So like even yesterday, I went to the gym and I worked out, I was active all day, blah, blah. And I was able to not eat breakfast, lunch, and I just waited until dinner time. And then I waited a little bit longer because I was still kind of in the zone. And when it was around like 10 o'clock-ish, that's when I started to eat. And I just kind of like eat a lot of food. And then, probably fell asleep around like midnight, 1 o'clock or something like that. And so I think when it comes to being relentless, it must certainly be tied in with like this idea of like constant productivity. And I don't mean to say productive like you must always be checking your email or do something for the sake of doing it. What I mean by productivity is to constantly produce things, to create things, to keep focused on your art and not let fear, pettiness, or letting other people or letting yourself discourage yourself. And I really do believe that one of the best ways to be more relentless in life is you just kind of need more energy. You need more vigor. And I think it's more of a physiological, like body physics, physical body thing rather than like kind of a mental thing. Because obviously our body and our mental things are deeply intertwined. It's kind of like the yin and yang. Except I would actually argue that perhaps if you just think about philosophy, 99.9% of credence has been given to our brains and to our mental faculties and almost little to nothing to the body. So ideally they'd be about 50-50. And actually, if you just think about it from like a practical evolutionary perspective, the human body is more important than the mind because we only have a mind in order to serve our body, which is to procure food, to not starve and freeze to death and stuff like that. So certainly actually, perhaps at the end of the day, the body is actually more important than the mind. And so this is my theory. I think most of the mental illnesses we have is because we don't really, because we don't take care of our bodies and our bodies are getting weaker. So that might just be consuming lots of sugar and, obviously putting on excess body fat, not walking around anymore, not lifting heavy stuff, not exposing yourself to extreme differences in weather, whether it be really hot or really cold, whether it be not exposing ourselves to the sunlight or UV rays or whatever it may be. And so I generally find that the best way to be more motivated in terms of mental activity and creative activity is actually to just strengthen up your physical body. And which always made me wonder, I'm like, okay, you have all these academics and scholars and individuals, they're all so fat and obese and overweight and generally just kind of look a bit sickly. I'm like, man, I wonder how much more productive all these individuals would be if they started to deadlift. Or even thinking about thinking about artists. Generally speaking, artists, you look at them, they're just they look super anemic, they're super unhealthy, they're all addicted to strange drugs, always smoking cigarettes, whatever. I'm like, what if they just lifted more often? I mean, even probably the thing that actually inspired me the most is after, Dr. Dre was out of the spotlight for a while and he came back and he was fucking jacked, right? I'm like, holy moly. And apparently all he does is work out and work on his music. So to me, Dr. Dre is one of my heroes because, man, a guy who's so productive, prolific, ruthless, and relentless with his music has been making hits decade after decade. And what's his routine? Going to the gym and staying focused on himself, not getting bothered by outside distractions. And yeah, so certainly if more people are just have more muscle mass, do more physical activity, my theory is as you start to build on more muscle mass, and this applies to if you're a male or female, if you have more muscle mass, you're going to obviously have more of these positive hormones, whether it be testosterone or endorphins, serotonin, blah, blah. And certainly we could leverage and we could ride off of those positive hormones for us to create our creative work. And so even for myself, I generally do is I wake up in the morning, have a bunch of coffee. Sometimes I'll do some writing. Sometimes I'll just go straight to the gym, lift some weights, do hot sauna, and then come back home, have some more coffee. And then after having done lifted weights at the gym, you kind of get this zen-like calm, but you kind of get amped up at the same time. And generally when I'm at the gym, I just bring an old iPod Nano, some earbuds, and right now I'm like listening to Meek Mill's Championships album. Really good. I love the song with Rick Ross and Jay-Z, the What's Free song. But anyways, songs with a heavy bass line. And as a consequence, after I work out at the gym, like I'm productive all day and I'm able to stay focused. And so I'm like wondering, I'm like, like obviously I'm just trying to, I don't think this is the answer for everybody, but for me, I was just always curious. I'm like, if I could maximize my own personal productivity throughout the whole day, what is the ideal lifestyle that I'd set up for myself? And it seems like it's a combination of drinking lots of black coffee, not getting distracted by email or other correspondences, lifting weights, also living in a place where it's like not gloomy and depressing, because I think that actually does affect my productivity. Like I'm currently in SoCal right now, and it's like a super bright ass sunny day, which is really nice. And having lots of black coffee and no other distractions. So I think I've been, and also fasting until around like 9, 10, sometimes even 11 o'clock. And for myself, I'm actually pretty proud of myself that from like 2010 to 2018, last 8 years, I've been like somewhat internet or photo famous. And my personal endeavor is for me to continue to stay relevant 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. I want to get like Dr. Dre and Jay-Z status. So just for yourself, just think to yourself, what are ways you could be relentless and thrive for the long term? And I think this is the problem, is that so much of us just live for short-term gains. We don't think about the long game. And I think, so the way I think is like, we should like kind of barbell it, is we live today like today we're going to be our last day, like memento mori. But at the same time, imagine like you'll live to be 120 years old in excellent health. Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to be 120 years old. But like, let's say you could be 120 years old with the health of like a very buff 50-year-old. Of course, you'd want to live that long. And and the point isn't to like build a company and sell for $1 trillion and just retire on some desert island. No, you'd probably want to continue to create, to produce, to be productive, be prolific, and create your artwork. I think ultimately the best use of our human metabolism is to create art that inspires us and inspires other people, that also could inspire other generations of humanity. So to be more relentless, cut out more negative people from your life. Watch films, movies, music, media, books that empower you. I'm currently watching Gladiator, the old school Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And before that, I watched American Gangster with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe, because I remember Jay-Z said he was so inspired by the film. He made his American Gangster album, which was actually not bad. And yeah, just start your own YouTube channel, start your own website, start your own blog. If I wanted to give you some tips on how you could be productive for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years and to stay relevant, and this sounds super controversial, is just delete your Instagram. Delete your Instagram. Don't give credence to social media, because it becomes like digital sharecropping, is that you're just building the land for your master, which is essentially Facebook, who owns Instagram. And even YouTube. YouTube's good too, but ultimately Google owns YouTube. So you don't want to be beholden to YouTube as a platform either. So that means build your own website, build your own blogs, and use kind of, YouTube or other forms of communication as a way for people to go back to your website. Also, probably the biggest tips I could do is start your own email newsletter, like MailChimp.com is my personal favorite. And fortunately and unfortunately, people aren't going to stop using email, at least for the next 100 years. So use that as the best way to keep in direct contact with your followers, your fans, or other people like that. And just to know that, your life is short, your life is limited. Why waste your life on bullshit you don't really care about? Focus on yourself, focus on your own artwork. Don't worry if other people call you like arrogant, asshole, whatever, selfish, whatever. It's important for us to be self-centered, self-focused, and in the zone in order for us to obviously empower ourselves, empower other people, and make even all of humanity more dope. So yeah, just this could be a chance for you to share your own productivity tips. Leave a comment in the comments below. Maybe just share some of your productivity tips. So for example, mine is don't eat breakfast or don't eat lunch, fast until dinner time. I follow like a mostly ketogenic diet, which means high in fatty meats and herbs and green stuff. No starches, carbs, sugars. Personally, also, I don't drink alcohol. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with alcohol, but I know for myself, usually the day after I get like a small hangover, which makes me less productive the next day. Drink lots of black coffee, cacao powder, cacao nibs, empowering music. Yeah, allow yourself to get into Zen zone. Oh, this is also probably a good productivity tip is I try to stand all day. My personal rule I'm trying to follow is I'm only allowed to either stand or lie on my back. So stand. Even I use a standing desk on when I'm working on a laptop, and the less you could sit, I think the more productive you'll be. Just a personal thought. So write your own personal thoughts and opinions on your own personal life productivity hacks, and just know that your life is short. You're born to do dope things. Peace out.